central bank digital currency, CBDCs. Trump has just said he's not having CBDCs.
General stablecoins in the way that they exist right now, them being regulated, that's a sort of solution that we don't want.
Meme coins, are they worth putting your money into?
So you really have this really unique instrument that I believe is tying culturally how important is this particular thing right now. So as much as it doesn't make sense, we've never been able to sort of bridge what's happening in our social lives and culturally what's relevant right now to something of value financially. In 10 years time, it's gonna either seem super obvious that yes, of course meme coins would work, or why did anyone think this was a good idea?
We've also seen 15 states in the US who have indicated about setting up a Bitcoin strategic reserve.
Can you risk not having even 0.5% of something in Bitcoin? Like, is it too risky not to have any?
I think it's so big that the risk is having no exposure at all. I'm Matthew Fraser, and this is Crypto Collective. After making millions with Amazon and e-commerce, I realized that if I was starting again today, crypto would be my first choice. I'm here to help you take your first steps and build real wealth. Ready to set yourself up for life? Let's go. Welcome to Crypto Collective. My name is Matthew Fraser, and today's episode I've got a really special guest. It's 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗢𝗡 from SwiftX. He's the market analyst there. He decides and tells everyone about the market trends and what's happening in the crypto space. Welcome, 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗢𝗡.
Thanks for having me, Matthew. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Awesome. So good to have you here, and I think it's going to be great because we're going to be able to dive deep into some of the insights that you have, having sort of the back-end knowledge of and the analytics within SwiftX, one of the Australian crypto exchanges. And just as what should I say, for full disclosure, I also do use SwiftX for my trading as well. So 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗢𝗡, can I start off perhaps with some of the recent announcements? I think that's probably the hottest topics. We've just seen Trump inaugurated. He's done a range of things. I'll let you tell us, and fire away.
Look, where do you start? It's really hard to keep up with the timeline I'm finding. I actually took 3.5 weeks off during Christmas and New Year's, which is the longest break I've taken in a long time. But I thought, look, if the market's going to go crazy, I want to be rested. But I spent more time scrambling, trying to catch up than actually staying ahead right now. But look, I mean, obviously we've known for quite some time, Bitcoin and crypto has been a big part of Donald Trump's administration's political campaign. And I guess it really hasn't left much to sort of be, not happy about, I guess, to find lack of a better word. Like, we've seen a lot of clarity along that there will be some sort of legislation or regulatory body framework coming, likely within the next 12 months is what they're gunning for. I think there's like 180 days for the current team that's been put together, with 𝗕𝗢𝗎𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 heading it, to basically put forward a legislative or framework that they can basically put finally, some sort of regulations around crypto in the US. And, you hear Donald Trump himself saying they want the US to be the home of crypto. So, they see it, I guess, as an opportunity to make more money. We know Donald Trump, if anything, is a businessman. So, I mean, obviously he sees this as an emerging market space. And there's been a lot of things hindering or holding the market back for quite some time in terms of being able to allow for that next wave of adoption. A lot of people have pointed to the outgoing chair of the Securities and Exchanges Commission, SEC, Gary Gensler, as being the prime reason why we've got lawsuit after lawsuit against crypto products. We're now seeing that whole regime shift take place right now. And I think it was a few days before his exit, we saw even Trump launch his own meme coin. I mean, these things are just happening so quick and so fast that it's really sort of taking our breath away in terms of where we're expecting the market to have been by this stage in terms of maturity. But I think another big piece of the puzzle that sort of was lifted recently was some of the legislative restrictions on US banks being able to custody and hold crypto assets. That's now been removed. So it's really hard to sort of visualize what this whole industry is going to look like, the next 1 to 2 years. We saw the ETFs doing amazing things for just a broader adoption of crypto with the institutions. But now, obviously we're going to move into probably a more retail heavy focus moving forward. Those consumer protection guidelines, it looks like there's going to be a lot of clarity around them at this stage, unless we, for some reason, see this whole momentum stall for some reason. But there's a very clear direction that there's going to be more answers than just random lawsuits being thrown around for the first time in a long time. So I think that's a breath of fresh air for all of us. I imagine, like yourself, we've been in crypto for a while now.
Well, I've only been in since I've known about crypto for many, many years. I've only been in since 2022, funny enough, so not that long. Although I've accumulated what would be considered for most people a fairly small fortune.
Yeah,
Mainly,
that's
so I
always
have a
good.
weighting of 60% Bitcoin, 25% Solana, and then a range of other altcoins, sort of AI, etc. in
Okay.
sort of 20%. So that's kind of where I sit. But one thing that we know Bitcoin's a journey, and I'm
Mm.
forever learning, and I'm just going through this phase right now. I'm just sucking in so many books, just from a range of different people. Any book I can find on Bitcoin, I'm like or crypto in general. Can I just bring it back to Pav with one of these
Mm.
particular initiatives that Trump has sort of, he hasn't said it's coming out, but Eric Trump, his son, said about 2 days ago that they're talking about removing capital gains tax on cryptos that are, I guess, made in America, you could say, specifically Solana, XRP, HBAR, and they even threw in Trump coin. That's made in America on the Solana blockchain. So, how do you think that's going to impact the markets in general?
It's going to be very interesting, and it definitely, I guess you could say, is a bit of a mover and shaker type of approach to something that's had no clarity, to almost offering a benefit to looking at this asset class if you're looking for some sort of risk exposure for your portfolio, some volatility. Look, it's very interesting. You could say, like, once again, it sounds like he's obviously got his own coin and he wants to make it tax free when he's on the way out, which could be a reality of this all. But if you're let's say someone actually trying to build something, in crypto, you look at the different jurisdictions that are around the globe. There are a lot of places that are already sort of 0% sort of havens from a capital gains perspective, because they're just looking to bring the industry towards them, right? So if anything, for me, it just makes the US more of an attractive offering for some of the more innovative producers and sort of tech leaders to come back to the US, or maybe migrate over to what you consider a more triple A or double A reputation wise of a jurisdiction. But look, it seems very colluded that you'd have your own coin as well at the same time, and you'd have it tax free. So I
Yeah.
sort of see both ends of the spectrum. It's a very interesting one.
Well, Pav, the fine print does say not investment type of coin. I think it says not for making money, but if you
Okay,
want to support
meme
something,
coin, perfect.
you can buy the meme coin.
Yeah.
Um, but Solana, let's say Solana, XRP, and HBAR, which is some of the other ones that were highlighted. Do you think, though, by having this no capital gains tax, that we would see a higher price and higher demand for those particular altcoins?
I think it would have some impact on the underlying, demand. Let's say for sure, because I mean, obviously the race everyone's concentrating right now is Solana versus ETH, which this stage it seems like ETH hasn't really caught up at all at any point in time. But again, yeah, if there's going to be more and more developers migrating across because they know there's going to be concessions for both their users and for them as developers to move towards a chain that, again, they're looking to reinforce that sort of American exceptionalism, even in the digital space. Look, I think it's going to have some impact. What it's going to be, we won't know. But it definitely, to me, it just goes to show they have an agenda, and it's US first across everything, and it just goes to show that they're ready to set some pretty bold sort of legislation and rules in place to favour their own. So it's fascinating to watch.
What do you see that from the analytics that you see regarding Bitcoin? Because some people are saying that Trump's in now. The price, the price went down yesterday, essentially for us, not necessarily because of Bitcoin per se, but for the other things. I think, what's it called? Seek Peak or Peak Seek or something, some other AI.
DeepSeeker,
Uh,
the AI in China.
Thank
Yep.
you, that one.
Yep.
Which I've also heard some whispers that it may now be banned in the US. But ban that thing. But when we're talking about Bitcoin though, and Trump's now in, and people are they're a bit concerned that now the price isn't pumped, right? What do you see behind the scenes that we're not seeing?
Look, a lot of if you remove, I guess, a lot of the noise, obviously the political tailwinds and sort of headwinds that you can sort of see shifting, we've got this, exiting of a anti-crypto regime to now a very positive, like there's definitely tailwinds there. But if we look back at what's actually happened to Bitcoin and its price and its history, it is tied and correlated very strongly to global liquidity. There's many commentators and analysts that sort of point towards these similar indicators, the value of money. We all look to Bitcoin. Once you learn about Bitcoin, you learn about its inherent property is that it holds its value, right? It's not inflationary. Like there's new coins being issued, but there's no artificial dilution of its supply. So that is our monetary system. So we'll go through periods where the monetary system's inflationary or deflationary. Like you look at somewhere like China right now, they're deflationary, so they're trying to stimulate as much as they can their economy just through stimulus. And then you have the US. We went through. Let's just look at the COVID era. Obviously, a lot of people finding themselves out of work. They had to basically inject a whole bunch of money into the system, the most we've ever seen in a short period of time. And as a result, we've seen inflation go crazy these last 3-4 years, right? So, everyone's food bill went from $200 a week to $350 a week, right? Like that was a reality of what we've seen over the last 5 years.
Millionaires are suffering.
Everyone's suffering, right? So, that basically sort of, it sort of attributes what we see the valuation of Bitcoin at any given time. It is definitely tied into these broader macro prices, because at the end of the day, you can value a house in dollars or bricks of gold or Bitcoin. It's just the instrument you're using to compare like for like. It's what's the underlying value there. So, we sort of still. Our analysis shows us that the global liquidity factors, the three major economies that really drive it, the US, China, and Japan. The US really hasn't started their regime of easing, so we're still in a relatively strict environment where they're not spending or enabling large amounts of funds to be borrowed for growth. And we've seen, I guess, one of the key messages in the Trump campaign so far has been that he's going to focus on growth, American exceptionalism. That comes at a price. So, they're going to have to basically issue liquidity for that to stimulate growth locally. All these tariffs that he talks about so they can produce more onshore. That doesn't happen without some sort of help from the government to sort of help, build that sort of economic growth and activity, specifically in the manufacturing sector. So I think focusing in on that specific zone, we would see likely monetary policy that is favorable to crypto prices moving with a bit more ease. As well as the US dollar that's been the strongest it's been since 2022, probably start to keel over a bit at this point in time. That would also be very positive tailwinds for higher prices. So I sort of get what's happened in the last 2-3 weeks even. Crazy it's only been that long. Seem like very classic top indicators, celebrities and political personalities launching meme coins. That never really seems like a bottom signal. But some of these more broader macro signals, like unless something goes wrong and they're not going to stimulate their economy, it's hard for us to not sort of foresee that there's still a bit more time left in this run.
Yeah, well, not only that, I did see where Trump had said that he was going to. The question was like, are you going to reduce rates? You just speak to the Fed, and he's like, yeah, basically is making out like he's got his finger on the discount rates button.
Pretty much,
which obviously would stimulate.
100%. And this is like I think this is good timing for this recording. We have the official funding rate update coming this week. So, right now the market is penciling in there's going to be no change to rates. Again, surprise outcomes drive a lot of volatility in our markets. And so, one thing we're sort of tentatively watching is, well, what if there is a surprise rate cut no one saw coming? And it is just, again, due to this new political shift. So these are sort of unknowns that are never priced into the market. At the same time, you could take away that a lot of the volatility that we're seeing in the market this week, while a lot of people are speculating it's all around this sort of deepfake AI, not deepfake, sorry. I forgot the name of it as well. The Chinese AI. It also could just be pragmatic risk, sort of risk off the table. We're approaching the end of the month. We've got some pretty key announcements this week from a growth perspective in terms of data, as well as inflation, as well as interest rates. So there's a lot happening that may just result in just very normal sort of profit taking potentially or hedging activities. Chinese New Year as well. We just had the Lunar New Year, so that's been notorious for some selling activity as well. So I think it's a culmination of things, but yeah, overall, we're still sort of positive in the short term of where we could be. Q1 historically has been a good period for Bitcoin past halving year. So we're still expecting the 2 next months there is potential for more upside.
We've seen, obviously, the Trump coin, the Melina coin, I think I got that right. We've seen Mr. Peanut coin. We've seen F coin. I don't want to say the word, but we've seen the F coin do extremely well in memes. From your side of things, why are people so gravitated to meme coins? Yeah, what is the enticement there? And are they worth putting your money into?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's very interesting. I think this will be a conversation that the understanding evolves, just as just a general consensus evolves towards meme coins. I know if you spoke about meme coins back in 2023 or 2022, kind of laughed out the door. I think it's almost like one of those, I think, sectors of the market where in 10 years' time, it's going to either seem super obvious that, yes, of course, meme coins would work, or why did anyone think this was a good idea? I just think what makes it so appealing is a lot of people, as much as it doesn't make sense, a lot of people can sometimes understand what at least this cryptocurrency is representing. So let's take, for example, the Trump coin. You're not necessarily investing in it to get exposure to Donald Trump's empire. You're more betting on this is a person of influence. Other people are going to agree that there's a value to how much influence or power that they sort of have in the local geopolitical space, or even just socially speaking, and they're going to basically invest in it because they see that it's a market, people can trade it. Again, like even just general memes, like we've had 𝗤𝗥𝗢𝗧𝗘, through last year, we've had that particular coin that you mentioned as well. If it's funny enough or can capture, I guess, socially, culturally, what people are feeling and invested in just personally right now, they might be willing to invest some of their money in it too, because it's just something of novelty. It's never really existed before. We've never been able to sort of bridge, I think, the social, what's happening in our social lives and culturally, what's relevant right now to something of value financially. So you really have this really unique instrument that I believe is tying, culturally how important is this particular thing right now. So the 𝗕𝗢𝗨𝗥 was a great example, and the whole US election's been a great example. Just as that sort of progressed over the months and weeks, there was different memes that were more absorbing the collective sort of attention at that period of time, and obviously the value of that happened as well. So like another great one's like 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗢𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗓, the pygmy hippo. That was everywhere, and you saw the price of that coin go higher. But right now it's not as culturally relevant, right? So we're not seeing that particularly take off too well. So I think what it does for meme coins is two things. And obviously we have this. It seems like infinite spinning wheel of activity and just seeing what's relevant to the culture and the zeitgeist right now. But it also means if you've invested in some of these coins that were funny 3 to 6 months ago, they may never come back because they may never be in the spotlight again, right? So it really is an interesting landscape where I think it's harder to be relevant and hold that value if it is purely culturally based. But at the same time, it just creates a very rapidly changing environment that I think a lot of people might find appealing. It's just very hard to say right now how many people actually want that. Yeah.
A couple of takes on that one, Pav, because one is, I remember the NFT sort of saga.
Yep.
And everyone was buying the ape coins and the bored apes or something like that, right? And it just seemed totally insane to me that people were paying, like, I'm sure it was 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, maybe even 7 figures for these, just like the ape, which I think you talked about, in the future we'll look back and think, oh, that probably wasn't such a great idea. I'm already looking back and thinking that was a stupid idea, but that's because I didn't buy them either. So I didn't lose any money, didn't win any money, so to speak. But I think you hit the nail on the head though with the meme coins. It's like a cultural novelty, like a culture club and novelty type thing, right? People just buy into it and, oh, this is fun. I think to a degree though, there's definitely a sense of, I could put $100 into this and I could get to $100,000. So I'm going to put my money into that. Would that be right?
I think so. I think it's everyone sort of invests for a reason, right? It's to pull out more than what you put in. So I think you just think about it, like a lot of people may not be able to pull apart like the performance of a company and understand like how they're making their profits versus expenses, and how they're raising cap to go build and expand and globalize, etc. So how do they value a stock? Whereas a meme coin, if there's a whole bunch of GIFs going around right now and that it's funny and it's spreading like wildfire with all your friends, well, maybe other people would maybe that would represent a meme coin, and that meme coin could have some intrinsic value at that time, and everyone buys it up. And if you get in early enough, the thought of the idea is that that is going to capture enough of the cultural mind at this point in time that more people would buy it. So it's sort of it's something that I don't think makes sense on if you try to measure it via how things have always been done, but it sort of provides I think a different way of trying to, I guess, get people to sort of buy into an idea or something that represents in this case like a meme. It's very different, but at the same time I can't get it because everyone sends emojis and memes all the time, so that's why it is somehow so relatable at the same time.
I heard another take on the Trump coin though, and that was that Trump has now set the stage for other companies and celebrities in the tokenization of their personal brand. And so 100%. They can buy into the Nike brand, the Michael Jordan brand, or whatever the celebrity is, which I think is really, really interesting. While we're on the last sort of thing on the meme coins, because of your insight knowledge, everyone would want to know, well, you've got your ear to the ground on these things. You mentioned a couple of meme coins before. Do you think of the up-and-coming meme coins?
Oh, up-and-coming's hard, only because, like we talked about, well, up-and-coming as in, like, growth, because if it is growth, it's...
Yeah, I guess, I put $100 in... Okay, pretend we're not recording this. Which 100... Which...
no, I've got a good answer here.
Okay.
I got a good answer. I think we can look at, patterns that we've seen already play out. And I think the market does intrinsically look for things that look familiar. So let's look at the Bitcoin ETF, right? The Bitcoin ETF got announced. There was actually quite a lot of buying leading up to it in 2023. Yes, we had the ETF listing in January and it was a bit lackluster. Price didn't go everywhere. But ever since then, we've seen nothing but crazy rampant buying for this Bitcoin ETF, right? So the idea that there's going to be meme coins now that represent ETFs as well, I think that's a game changer. You're going to open up, the accessibility for a market that's much larger. There's going to be more demand for those assets outside of like traditional ways to get exposure to crypto. So already you have a group of meme coins, in my opinion, that are going to have an edge on the rest of the market. So some of the meme coins that they're looking to make ETFs for, that there's currently filings for, to my knowledge, are obviously Trump, Melania Coin, Dogecoin, and Bonk. So they're kind of on my sort of radar of ones that obviously when the market is accepting of meme coins, the same way they're accepting of, like you mentioned, NFTs last cycle, you're going to get access to it either through a traditional crypto exchange, or you're just going to use your share broker account and just purchase it through that. So I think that's a very obvious place to be looking right now. And then to break down the two there, obviously Doge and Bonk, both dog coins, one on the Solana network, one on its own network. And then you've obviously got the whole meme around Elon and the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, and even the Dogecoin being on their website very briefly before being pulled down. There's just a lot of...
Such good advertising, though.
Exactly, right? So good. And I'm pretty sure he's yet to launch Dogecoin 1, the satellite too, so we might see that sometime soon as well.
Right.
But that's where I would be looking, to be honest. There's a lot of like getting in the trenches and finding, really low caps that, the market's finding is relevant right now that you obviously could invest in and you may make something off, but the risk is much larger there. And I would still say that the risk is larger on these assets as well. But in terms of like measuring what we've seen in the past play out now for a meme coin category, that's something different. It's never happened before. So that's something I'm looking forward to monitoring.
Okay. Well, then, while you're giving us some insights, what would you say is the most relevant, I guess, narrative within altcoins that you're seeing for 2025?
It's been interesting. I think there's three main ones really. I think it's been heavily led by meme coins. There's just no doubt about that. That's the majority of trading volumes that we're seeing on decentralized exchanges. It's the most amount of tokens being created. AI has been a carryover category since about the late 2022s that have continually, again, found speculative interest. It's I think appeared on the top search results on CoinGecko repeatedly now. And then thirdly, the most common one is your infrastructure tokens. So, who's building the next Solana killer? That's a common theme. Who's building the next Ethereum killer? Who's going to...
Tell us now, without a doubt, you heard it on the Crypto Collective podcast. What is the Solana killer?
Look, we'll wait to see it, but Sui is definitely a front runner and a
Sui, there we
contender.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it. Like they've got obviously a good team behind them. I think they've got a very clever marketing team as well. They've obviously gone and you know so far like outperformed quite a fair chunk of the market for the last couple of months. Obviously, we've seen Sui move quite a bit in the last 2 months when the rest of the market was, you could say, relatively quite flat. So it's looking good at this stage. But you know, there's also other infrastructure tokens that may not be relevant right now, but may be relevant in the near future. So you have these chain specific infrastructures. So for example, you've got gaming chains, you've got AI chains, you've
Are
got
you talking about like
your
AVAX or something, or is that
yeah,
what
you've
you're
got
referring to?
well, yeah, you've got like IMX, which is like specifically gaming. That's like
IMX, yeah.
there's that one too. But AVAX as well, like they're very heavily in the gaming space as well. So you have like a lot of these other niche chains that might potentially gather some interest as we get more active users back to the market. And that's another way to they're pretty much the three categories that we're seeing trending quite a bit.
So it was layer ones, infrastructure, AI, and meme coins,
Yeah,
which is
that's right.
fascinating. You said that meme coins has the highest trading volume. Is that on SwiftX as well?
No, that's on just global decentralized exchange volumes. On our platform, like we're mainly seeing the blue chips usually. To be honest, I think the top three in the last 12 months have been Bitcoin, Solana, and XRP. So interesting there. Ethereum not on the top three in the last 12 months, but the market definitely favors the top 10 at this stage at least. They seem to be the ones obviously moving and performing the best concurrently.
Yeah, interesting. So now thinking about the year ahead, what do you guys sort of put out some sort of list of, that we think these are going to be the top performing coins for 2025? Is that something that you guys put your name to?
Not yet. We're a bit sort of under the pump and scarce of
Okay.
resources at the best of times. We'd love to spend some time and do some research in that way, but we do provide regular snapshots of different sectors of the market. So, for example, we did a piece on the Solana ecosystem before it really blew up, and we mentioned a couple of the key players in that space, like Jupiter, Jito, and then even some of the meme coins like Bonk in that example. And then, even understanding like the AI sector. So like we do have research reports that we put together. They're put together, I think, at least one or two a month we have, and sort of deep diving into AI. So, how do you even go about investing in the AI sector? So understanding like there's different ways to get exposure, and then what are some of the assets in that as well.
And what's your take then, Pav, on stable coins, and what role do you think they'll play in the global crypto space?
Very bullish. If I had to say, I think that's the most bullish sector for me when it comes to making sure we don't. The one issue we always have with every bull run is obviously that massive retracement, right? It's the liquidity exiting the crypto space and just going back into the world of liquidity, right? So if there's no money in the system, how can prices stay higher? With stablecoins, they offer, I think, two really unique opportunities right now. I think there is a massive push for regulating them, and regulation of stablecoins will obviously create more use cases. And if there's more use cases that generate yield on chain for some of these stablecoins through like traditional banks, that's going to give another reason for stablecoins not to be sold off into fiat dollars. I also think stablecoins again will probably be one of the first like real use cases, hopefully, for something called the real world asset tokenization scheme. So I know Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, big proponent and supporter of tokenization of assets. So what we're talking about there is, imagine if you held a stable coin in your digital wallet and every day you received a yield. So instead of like putting it in your traditional bank, we have to wait at the end of every month cycle for your bill to get your interest payment. This new sort of emerging technology class, it allows you to accrue it daily. So then you have a greater effect on compounding, the user benefits at the end of the day. But also for someone like the US, it allows them to fractionalize and sell off more of their government debt a lot faster as well. So it's sort of like one hand feeds the other in a sense. It's almost like the new way of potentially having that version two of the money system, the digital money system. But the real obvious risk there is like centralized digital currencies, which again have been dismissed at this stage, that they're not going to be a thing where the government can track how you're spending your money. But private bank issued stablecoins or bank supported stablecoins, that seems to be something that doesn't look like it's going to stop. I think it's going to get there probably quicker than what people
So
expect.
you're talking about central bank digital currency, CBDCs.
Yeah,
Is that
so that's
correct? Because Trump has just said he's not having CBDCs, interestingly enough.
oh,
In Australia, there has been a push by the current government to bring in something very similar to that.
no. So I would say like that's a sort of solution that we don't want. But just general stablecoins in the way that they exist right now, them being regulated and having regulated products where you can do what you do at your normal bank, but do it in crypto land, let's call it.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a massive trend to watch, because then we're talking, billions, if not trillions of dollars, remaining in the crypto eco space and not going back and being converted into fiat. And there's already numerous benefits that are seen there. I think the A16Z report that everyone can download, that's a pretty well-known report, looked at the cost for some of the major banks to just transfer funds. It's anywhere from, I think it's an average of $44 just to move money around. Obviously, if you're doing that through stablecoins and you're using something like a scalable layer 2, it's costing a fraction of a cent. So there's lots of incentive there for even the big banks to get on board. And a lot of that what I mentioned at the top of the show, that legislation now allowing banks to custody and hold digital assets is now possible. It opens up the door for some of these solutions to get, I think, past the door, past regulation, and have a legislative framework. So then, we've always speculated on what's a use case for crypto. Like, this is a real one. It's quite serious, like settlement times. So we could really see that materialize in the next 12 to 24 months. And I think that's really exciting for the industry.
Well,
It's a bit boring, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I love it because I come from a mortgage broker background many moons ago. Many moons ago. So I sort of understand a little bit about lending. And what I think is really, really powerful right now is actually the removal of the sub 121 in the States, because it opens up the doorway now for Australian banks as well. Now, I did hear through, it was actually Peter Dunworth that I heard this from, that he said that 2 out of the 4 major banks are already looking at frameworks to custody Bitcoin, which would make sense. Yeah. And where I think that's going to be powerful is it will open up the doorway for people who potentially are not thinking about, we want to have to set up this fund and go to an exchange and buy Bitcoin and hold it, right? We don't want to have to deal with that. So I think either, maybe SwiftX partners with ANZ Bank, for example, so they become the pathway to ANZ Bank to essentially, you could maybe even buy it through ANZ, which is done directly through sort of in the back door through SwiftX, because they've got the infrastructure to do that. Then it's held in ANZ Bank. So when someone goes onto their net bank, they've got their savings account, the check account, the credit card, the home loan, and then there's their Bitcoin account, right? That's where I think it's going to. And by doing that, I think it's going to open up the door to more people to come into the Bitcoin community.
Absolutely.
Because it makes it, like in Australia, I say that people actually do trust Australian banks. They may not trust a bank's in Lebanon, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There. But no one wakes up in the morning and thinks, oh my God, ANZ Bank's are they going to steal my money today? So they do have a lot of trust there, right?
Yeah, and it may even open the door through further regulation along the lines of, this legislation lifting. Well, what's the next thing that comes and, enabled? And, we might get insurance products then finally for crypto. Like, a lot of people have been asking for a long time for some sort of insurance offering. Even if it costs a premium, they would just want to be protected. So, if there's a bank custodying these assets, obviously that risk framework might seem more appealing for insurers, and it's a whole different landscape then. And we get all this sleuth of insurance products that come out. And then you have like maybe even insurance from, staking, slashing and stuff like that. There's all these different potential use cases that come off the back of, I think, this next wave of adoption. It's very exciting.
Yeah, because we used to have staking, right? I think
we did.
We had staking in Australia. Now, I don't know what happened there, but do you know what it got banned or something?
It's, just up for clarity from a regulatory perspective. So again, I think a lot of what's happening in the US is going to lead the way for how things are done. Let's say, for example, here in Australia. So some of those sort of standards and practices. We've already got the tokenization mapping exercise carried out at the moment. I think it's at a consultative phase at the moment, where they're taking basically opinions on from people in the industry on the proposal structure and way to go about regulating crypto. So there is movement happening on ground here in Australia, but I still do feel like if someone as big as the US takes charge, takes the lead, well, the rest will sort of, over time try to keep up, especially if it's seen as a growth industry, which is what we all want to hear as early adopters.
Can I ask you about adoption? We've got
Okay.
massive institutional adoption. Obviously, MicroStrategy would be probably the number one institutional adopter, and you would say, I guess, with the ETFs, BlackRock and what have you. But we've also seen now 15 states come to mind in the US who have indicated about setting up a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Obviously, you've got Trump has obviously announced that as well. What are you hearing on the ground as far as also, I guess, other countries, and what do you think sort of impact it'll have on the Bitcoin space?
I think it's a very obvious one in the sense that when one starts, the rest follow. So again, we're looking at the US lens specifically, but I think it's going to be a shift in momentum for holding. Like, it's just going to be one of those things of, can you risk not having even 0.5% of something in Bitcoin? Like, is it too risky not to have any? I think there's going to be potentially a lot of questions being asked in that vein. But I think, again, if we're talking about big catalysts, like I still think that's still yet to come. Like, if we do see one start, then the next start, then the next start, what effect does that have globally? I think that's going to be the interesting sort of trend to keep an eye on.
I think it's so big that the
Yeah.
risk that the retail investor now has is having no exposure at all.
Yeah, being a
And I
no-coiner,
think,
it's gotten worse.
yeah, it pains me. I don't know why it pains me that other people don't have it, because I mean, if they don't have it, then it doesn't matter to me. But I think,
Yeah.
my friends and family for sure, I'm like begging them, you have to be a part of this. And I think because I'm watching crypto media news every day, I digest it every day. I basically live and breathe it. And of course, you're not a true Bitcoiner until you've got a baseball cap, right? With a B on it, and a neon sign in the background.
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah, so I'm super bullish on what's going to happen with that space there. Can you talk about perhaps Bitcoin lending? And for example, what I've used Block Earner, and I know Block Earner you probably heard of in Australia, and I've gone down that path of experimenting with their platform. It's not something that SwiftX currently does, correct? Maybe it's something that SwiftX will do in the future as well, is lend on Bitcoin. But can you talk about Bitcoin lending and the impact that'll have in the marketplace?
I think it just opens up the door for more use cases, right? Like you're saying, like at the end of the day, Bitcoin is one thing at its purest. It's collateral, so it's worth something that in its history, it's gone up. Every 4 years, it's making new highs, right? In line with the halving. So what it enables you, obviously, if you've realized it to a point where you're like, all right, I'm happy with the value of this collateral asset, you're able to take out basically a loan against it using that as a collateral. So, as long as you're, obviously this is for everyone sort of suss out for themselves, like not over collateralizing themselves and going into liquidation or anything like that. I think a lot of these products, they are at this stage quite, consumer focused and making sure that there's not too much inherent risk for using the products, but everyone just needs to take that into their own sort of hands. But it enables another use case, right? So, there's not really a situation where, well, there are maybe some, but like, holding shares in a company, once you have them, you can't really do too much else with them. Where at least if you have something like Bitcoin as an asset that is worth, X amount as collateral, you can use that to then go and engage in a loan and pay that back over time. So I guess the closest thing we have right now is, mortgaging and real estate. Having a house, you go and refinance. Your house has gone up maybe 10% in the last 1 to 2 years. So that gain you're then able to redraw against, right? And maybe make some improvements or go make some other investments. That's kind of the same way to sort of visualize it as how it would work for Bitcoin. But yeah, definitely a space that I think once we sort of see Bitcoin become more mainstream, it'll probably be more demand for it. And it's definitely an area that we as a business are looking into as well. But it's very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, obviously because I've experimented with it as well, because I want to sort of share within the crypto collective community how this actually works in real time. And what's interesting is, you can lend up to, right now it's 40% LVR, 9.5% rate. So you've got to think in your mind, is Bitcoin going to go up more than 9.5% this year? And I mean, last year did 120+%. So it was a no-brainer. And I think also what I actually did, just as a side note, is I just went back and bought more Bitcoin. So I borrowed the 40% and went back and bought more Bitcoin with the 40%. Yeah. So awesome. We've touched on a lot of really interesting things actually. But all those things, I could go down lending for like another hour. But I think it's been really, really good. Pav, thank you so much for coming on to today's episode. We've touched on so many amazing topics. Like, there's so many I could have gone even deeper on. But for those who are listening today, just please thank Pav for coming on. He's the market analyst there at SwiftX. For those of you who do want to come on board and join SwiftX, they do have a special promotion, $20 of free Bitcoin. All you have to do is use the link in the show notes of this episode, and you can get your $20 of free Bitcoin using SwiftX. Pav, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great conversation.
Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to Crypto Collective. If you've enjoyed this episode, the best way to show your support is to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode. You can also find more of me at I'm Matthew Fraser on all social media platforms.